what I'm gonna focus on is nothing related to training. You don't have to learn something to be faster. It's enough just to upgrade your software, which is amazing if you ask me. Can you imagine? You simply get a newer version and suddenly something is better. And why is it better? First of all, for a long time, everybody was focusing a lot on the opening time. How long does it take to open this assembly or this drawing? Well, yeah, that's an important factor. But I don't think anybody really paid attention to your whole workflow. From the morning, you come, let's say in the office at 9 o'clock, you had your tea or coffee and you start working. And during this process, you do many things like you open assemblies, you add mates, you change configurations, you add sketches, you go back to the assemblies, you change configurations again, you keep going back and forth. Becoming more productive overall, I guess that's the goal. And SolidWorks actually started partnering with clients like you to really understand the typical workflows and ask the participants, okay, how much would you like to improve here and here and here and there? And interestingly enough, the development was actually focusing on these incremental improvements in such a way that when 2025 was launched, those clients were part of that, of those testing. They got back and started using SolidWorks 2025 PR1 in this case, as you can see, and an overall improvement of 30% increase in productivity. It's pretty crazy if you ask me. I guess any manager, if you tell anybody, hey, would you like your team to be 30% more productive, or actually let's put it this way, reduce the lag in operation by 30%. Now, I wasn't part of this testing, so I wanted to do my own testing. But before that, let's see what SolidWorks actually shows in the public domain, right? In the What's New manuals and things like that. So a couple of things that got really improved are related to graphics, and I have a feeling that NVIDIA has a big role in that with the collaboration with SolidWorks, with improving the drivers. The fact that after you go to the system options, how many times do you do that? Well, maybe not very often, but if you are in drawings or if you are in assemblies, many times you might go and change something in system options. Any little thing that you change used to trigger graphic generation computation. So pretty much the CPU calculating again the graphic triangles. Well, that no longer happens in 2025. So that's pretty cool. Unless, of course, one of the system options that you changed affects the graphics. And I think we're going to test that in a moment. The other cool thing that was released in 2024, and you can see here, I'm showing about all the enhancements comparing 2023 with 2025. So what has happened in the last 2 years as part of that project. This was a big thing. Most of us are working with the edges visible. We want to see the topology of our parts, right? Very seldom you go with just in shaded mode. So the computation of those edges, it can be time consuming. It wouldn't be nice if instead of having the CPU calculating them, you have the GPU doing that. And guess what? Now we can do that. And if you have a lot of non-planar surfaces, so you need to calculate the intersection of those surfaces and display them on the screen, this is where you're going to see a big improvement in performance. Of course, for that, you need to have a pretty good video card to really take advantage of this. A couple of things that might not look like much, but improve performance drastically, especially when you work with complex 3D sketches. You can see here, they pretty much went and recoded certain features. And if you hear anybody saying, well, SolidWorks is a 30-year-old software, it's old in the tooth, it has all the code inside, that is no longer true. We are focusing on things that we find are lagging and are recoding the software. So this is actually a pretty young software, at least in this area. This is the big one, and again, maybe we're gonna do a little bit of a test, especially if you work with large sketches. And you might say, well, nowadays is not that much important. So getting stuff from DWG used to be kind of 2010 time when people would convert, but now we are in SolidWorks. Well, guess what? Nowadays, a lot of work is done with simply using your phone to take a picture of something and using the image to trace the edges and generate a DXF. There's specialized software for that. It's a free software. You can use it. It's going to create huge, gigantic, ginormous DXF files. Once you import them in SolidWorks, the performance matters. And again, I was able to test that. We'll see if we have time today to show you it works much better in 2025. A few other things. Pattern features. If you do huge patterns or patterns of very complex features, one thing that was a pet peeve of most of us is the preview in pattern. So pattern is trying to show you the preview, and that can be extremely time consuming. In effect, it's pretty much calculating the pattern once for the preview, and then when you click OK, it calculates it again, right? So we're trying to apply a common sense approach of how to minimize that preview. So if you pattern a pattern, the seed feature will not be highlighted. Also, if a seed feature has a lot of faces, again, it's not going to be highlighted, right? If you started to use more and more the advanced options like the instances to vary, which I found out that most of my students fall in love with, again, performance and accuracy gets improved. And this is a big one. Even it's not just the preview, but just simply clicking OK to have the pattern created. It's faster in 2025. Any sheet metal users here? If you are, and if you're working with really complex sheet metal parts, you know that sometimes there is a lot of lag in operation, especially if you have cosmetic thread features and your settings are to show the shaded cosmetic thread. So you can see we can improve. Again, I guess it's again NVIDIA and SolidWorks working together to improve the graphics for that. Now, sheet metal and drawings, that's another area where some of you are complaining about lag, right? So now drawings of sheet metal parts are faster, not only for opening, but really in operation, making, updating drawings. This doesn't look like a big one, but it's a huge one really for assemblies. Imagine how many of you use center of the mass as a feature in the tree. You probably don't know that, but if you have the center of the mass there, you are actually triggering the calculation of the mass properties of the assembly. And pretty much every rebuild you do, or if you move things around, let's say you have a flexible assembly and you drag things around and you want the center of the mass to update pretty much on the spot, that was very slow in the past. It's better now. I took a little video here, but instead of a video, I'm going to try to go to a live demonstration. I preloaded two Among Us assemblies. They're pretty much the same assembly. On the left, I have SolidWorks 2023. On the right, I have SolidWorks 2025. About 147,000 components. And opening was faster in 2025. I have a video for that. If you might have seen it. If not, I'll send you the link. But let's take a look at the lag in operation. I'm just going to try to select something on the screen in 2025, right? And you can see, even with scroll selected item into view, this was fast. So you can see the context toolbar popping up right away, right? Let's do the same thing in 2023. I'm going to try to select again a face. And it's not just the scroll selected item into view that is slow in 2023, but even the context toolbar, it's laggier. And then we're talking about spinning the model. I already started to move my mouse with the middle mouse button pressed here. And you probably notice a 3-second lag. If you're looking on the frames per second at the bottom of the screen, somewhere here, it's about 4 to 5 frames per second. So it might be acceptable. Mind you, I have just an NVIDIA RTX 2000 ADA. So for laptop, it's kind of the entry level, but pretty capable. Let's see SolidWorks 2025. So I just started the spinning. It's instantaneous, right? I didn't do anything other than upgrading the software. And notice the frames per second. I'm seeing there 10 frames per second. Alan and I were actually really surprised when we examined the files of a client that I unfortunately cannot share with you. In 2023, they have about 7 frames per second. In 2025, they have 40 to 50 frames per second when you move inside the assembly, which becomes important if you zoom in, zoom out. You don't want any lag in operation, right? So here I'm in 2023. Depending on where I'm zooming, you're going to see quite a bit of lag in operation, also a lot of Z clipping happening on the screen. Let's try the options. So if I go to tools and options and I don't change anything, simply click OK. Notice there was no computation happening in 2025. If I go to do the same thing in 2023, right? So I'm simply going to click OK. At this moment, this guy is frozen because it's going to start computing the graphics. So I cannot do anything to it for, in this case, probably for about a minute. You can see the circle spinning and things like that, right? And I have many other things to show, but really, it's all about the elimination of those 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 minute breaks or stops that we used to experience in older versions, which means probably less headaches. You're going to be more relaxed, more focused. You're going to be in the flow, designing in the flow. Less coffee because you're not going to have those awkward breaks. Just look at that. This is still spinning. It's pretty crazy, right? So small changes, but conducive to huge improvements in productivity and really the well-being of the user.